I've got this cheap whacker compactor plate, whatever you want to call it, and it's a great bit of kit and it's been really good, but I don't use it that often, and I think that's part of the problem. It's been sat for probably over a year now because I've got a diesel roller for doing the drive, so I just didn't have the use for it. But I got it out to do that because I can't get the roller down, but it started squealing, making this god awful noise, and I thought it was just a belt. I'd hoped it was just a belt, but it's got a bit more intense. So this is just the motor part of it, and it's mounted to the actual plate with the exciter on it by 4 rubber sort of cotton reels, we call them. But yeah, so I thought it was just a belt. It wasn't the belt, so I've taken that off. You have to de-adjust the engine, slacken the belt off, get that off, and I've had to take the exciter plate off because it's a bit more serious. So this is the exciter, whirligig. You can hear the problem. So I've already pulled this apart, but we lost that footage. These things happen, but however, I haven't got the bearings out yet, but obviously that's the problem. So can you hear that? If I spin this up a little bit, it's going to wobble, but you'll hear what the noise was. Hear that grinding. First job is to get rid of the oil that's in it. This is a, what is this, a 6mm Allen key bolt. This is awkward, and this is, I wasn't expecting this at all. Drain the oil out. There's meant to be 100 millilitres of oil in here. We're nowhere near. It barely covers the bottom. So I think that was part of the problem maybe, but there is a sticker on here. Oil already filled, don't refill, oil level not visible. But if it wasn't enough to begin with, it probably didn't help. That, and it's been sat for a while. If you see the colour of this, kind of gives the game away to what we're going to see inside. It's rusty. However, so to drain this off, plug out, and then you have to tip this thing upside down, which isn't the easiest thing, especially if you're trying to save it into a jug. But yeah, you tip that upside down, oil comes out. I'm just showing you what I did. So this pulley is going to come off easier than yours probably will, but it's a righty tighty, lefty loosey thread. So standard thread. Keep our bits in there out the way. This wasn't tight, but it does stick. So you might get it if you haven't got a puller just by doing that. I just put a puller on it, just a two-legged puller, and it literally just went click, and it was just stuck. There's a woodruff key, so get that out. Flat-bladed screwdriver. It might be stuck in there, but I would remove it because we're going to want to get that oil seal past it. Give it a tap. That's it. And then little screwdriver underneath, and that comes out. On this one, the woodruff key's got a curved side or curved end and a flat end, so it only goes in one way. On this one, the curved end is towards the bearing. Again, put that in the magnetic tray, pulley out the way, and then it's just take these 2 covers off. The oil's out of it, so it's not going to dump it everywhere. These are just some 10mm bolts, and if you can, you want to get new gaskets. Most of these machines will be the same, I should imagine, and I've seen some where they've got like a cork gasket. This has got like a fibre gasket, but it's bonded both sides. It doesn't come away without destroying itself, so I'm going to need a new gasket, but that's a future me problem. And to get it off, you can tap it with a soft hammer because you don't want to damage the edge, or you may have to get a bit of a beefy screwdriver and just try and get it moving. Once you've got it moving, try and bring it off level. And then there's a seal in here. Try not to damage that, or unless you're going to replace it. I can't find a new one for this, so I'm going to have to use the old one. Right. Now when this is spinning, it sounds like the noise is this side, but once these covers are off, I think that's the problem one, but we're going to change both bearings. There's no point in putting that one in, because this one's been through the same amount of it's travelled the same distance, been in the same situation. So if this one hasn't failed, it's only a matter of time. Now to get this out, I'm going to have to hit this side here. So this is the counterweight. It's just basically a big lump of iron that's imbalanced. So as it spins, it makes this vibrate. We're going to have to hit that. Now, if you've got a copper hide hammer, that might do it. I haven't, but what I have got is a drift. So I'm going to put that against that and hit that with a hammer so it won't damage that. Right, well, you missed most of that. I'm having camera troubles. It keeps turning off. I don't know why, but we're going to have strong words later. However, using my drift, I'm going to place this on the back of this shaft, drive it out that way. Got the tray to catch any oil because there's always going to be oil. Even though this has been drained, there's always going to be some residue in there and it just goes all over the floor. So I've got some old rag down to mop up any of that that's still left in there. Although this one has been up on its side, so most of it's gone there. But just be aware, you will be some oil, even though there wasn't a lot in this to start. So drift on the back, and it has to come out this way. Most of them seem to come out that way. This one is actually the exciter's welded or part of this plate, so it makes it really awkward because it's top heavy. It keeps wanting to fall that way, so I'm balancing it with my legs to hold it upright. I've got a couple of bits of timber to protect my floor because obviously this metal, if I start hammering it, it's going to crack this concrete or chip it. So that's just to protect the floor, tray to catch the oil, and it should drive out. Well, it will drive out this way. You will have to be pretty mean with it. Once it gets going, it came out like that. Now, this bearing is actually the good side, but even then, you can still hear it. And you can feel it. Instead of being smooth, it's like, you can just feel it rolling over something. There's probably rust or something that's built up on the inner race. Yeah, there is. You'll never see that, but the inner race doesn't look too bad, but the outer side, you can see, yeah, you can see where it's gone rusty. So that's what that issue is, but that's the good one. We're going to change both of them anyway. Now I have got this bearing removal installation set, so I might use that, but first I'm going to try just knocking it out because it wasn't that horrendous to knock that side out. So my guess is that one will come out this way easily, and we'll see if there's a shoulder in there as well. This is the pulley side. You see there's a lip there, so that's how far, and you can also see there's like I say relatively clean bit, and then just about here the colour changes. It's like a tide mark, so we know that this side has got to go in to there, or the outer edge has got to be at least recessed that far. And on this one it kind of makes sense because the seal cover, it's got a raised portion on it. If we don't sink that, set the new bearing in deep enough, that won't clamp down properly and it'll just dump oil out. Right, let's get that side out. Hopefully resolve the battery problem. I think I had a battery dying, so spin this around. Now, I don't know if this is going to be long enough. Possibly. Ideally I'd have a longer one of that. You could maybe use an old 1/2 inch extension, socket extension, sacrificial one. But let's, oh, is that moving? Yeah, it's coming, so that's good. So what we could do, could use one of them bearing puller cups, just to right, that's coming out fairly easy, isn't it? Yeah. This one I think is going to be the worst bearing. Here we have it. Right, so they're not too bad to get out. So I'm wondering if I might stick them in the freezer when I get the new ones, just to make installation a little bit easier. Yeah, on this, you've got some numbers on it, but you couldn't see them from the outside because they were, if that's the outside, they were mounted with the numbers both sides pointing inwards. I don't know if that was deliberate, but what's that? CGJF, and it's a, oh, this feels horrible. 6209 Z2. All right, let's see if we can't find some replacements. Can you hear that? Yeah. Not good. Right, I've managed to get some bearings. These are a budget bearing, which isn't really a surprise. However, I've managed to get some replacement. I was happy with it, SKF or FAG if I could, because I've used them on cars and never had any issues with them. So I managed to get some FAG ones, and they were £15 each. So I've got a pair of them and some sealant or some Loctite type bearing adhesive, whatever you want to call it, to hold them in place. Obviously there's going to be a lot of vibrations with this thing, but it's from a company called Simply Bearings here in the UK. And I just rung the guy because I was having I found the manufacturer, but I couldn't find any. They don't even list this bearing on the website, so it's probably an old bearing. But I couldn't find anything about this one. But I rung Simply Bearings, and really helpful guys. So I've not used them before, but we'll see. It's the weekend now, so yeah, look, that's locking up. Did you see that? It stopped. There's obviously something in there. Right. Yeah, it's the weekend now, so they should be here Monday. I am going to clean all this up, but I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to leave this covered in oil because I don't want anything going rusty. So now, but for now, we're going to get this one off. You probably could just put this on a vise, protect that edge. What's that in there? Oh, there's a bit of foam or something in there. Guessing that needs to stay there, so we might leave the nut in there. Yeah, we'll probably be able to hammer that off. I'm going to go with the puller option. Let's see if this doesn't make things a little bit easier. Press would be ideal. If you've got a press, you're laughing. I miss presses. It's so much easier. I've often pondered getting one, but I don't do this sort of stuff an awful lot. Let's see if this helps. All right. There we go. That's making fairly light work of that. To the point where put that there. That's it. So that's the balance shaft. There's definitely something floating around in that, but I've got weird thing. Oh no, there it is. I was going to say the outer race looks better on this one, but it's not. There's corrosion on there. From there around it looks clean, so that would. There's some in here as well. Right, anyway, new bearings on their way, so as soon as we get these, we'll pop them in. And in case you've got one of these, CGJF 6209Z2, it's got a 45mm internal diameter, an 85mm external, and a 19mm width. So 45, 85, 19. So the bearings are here. I got these the next day, which was good, on Saturday as well. So can't knock Simply Bearings. I've got these from. Can't knock the delivery. FAG bearings, nicely sealed. So we're good to go. I've also got another one indoors. Got some of this bearing lock, so belt and braces. A couple of things I've done off camera is I've just cleaned it. I've cleaned the inside of this, and I've cleaned the counterbalance, or the weight, or whatever you want to call it. But I can't find yet gaskets, so I'm going to have to reuse the old ones. A little bit of sealant, so I haven't trimmed any off because I want to keep the thickness in case that's important. But what I have done is I've just chamfered the inside of the gasket there, so that when we put the new bearings in, it doesn't grab any gasket and pull it down the side and make things a little bit more difficult to install. So just took a tiny chamfer just to make that ready to go. the other thing I'm trying is I've put the counterbalance and one of the bearings in the freezer, only for like half an hour or something, just to see if it makes it a little bit easier to knock in, rather than have to beat the granny out of it. So they're in the freezer. I'll just set up there, and then I'll go and grab this and try and tap this one in. I'm going to put the end one in first, so this one, that goes in first, and then that one will go on the balance first, and then the balance and that bearing go in together. So what I'll do is, when I've put that one on the shaft, on the balance weight, I'll put them both in the freezer, try and make it a little bit easier to get into the centre of this bearing and into this end. Right, so that's the bearing just out of the freezer, so I've got to kind of move quickly. I've put some bearing lock around there already. I'm going to put a little bit around that bearing before I put it in. Now I can't find my copper hide, so I don't want to hit the bearing surface, so I'm going to be using this to get it started, and then spin that round to seat it. So here we go. Get the lid off of that first. Right. A bit of bearing lock. So there's some on there already. Now, as far as I can see, these are non-directional, so that's good. Got a block of wood supporting that. And the idea is to knock this down. Yeah. That's that. So that's that one in. You can hear the tone change when it hits the stop. Right. First one in. I'm going to leave that to sit for a bit, and then we'll put the shaft on. Okay, so this one's just, that one's warm, but this has just come out the freezer. I've put a little bit of oil around this. I don't want to glue the bearing to this bit. And I put a little bit of oil around there just to aid in installation. And then same thing again. I've got a collar that will sit over, because we don't want to bash the outer edge of this. And we knock that down. So it's flush at the back, which is about there. You hear the tone change when you're banging it. There you go. Don't want any bits around there. And that's in. Right, so that's that. Now I'm going to put this whole thing in the freezer to make that go in there a little bit easier. So we're about 3/4 an hour later. This has been in the freezer. I may have spotted a little, it might not be a problem, but if I'd put it in, that one on there first, and then drove this in this way, this would help line up with the bearing, if you know what I mean, that's in there. So it might have been easier to put it in the reverse way I've done it. I've done the back bearing first in there, but however, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't think it's going to be too horrible, but we never know. You might see me move this around a bit so I can see what this back end's doing. And obviously if I'd maybe done this more, although this isn't tapered, so I'm waffling about nothing really. Put a bit of that on there. And what I've got to try and do is get that to drop in to the centre of that bearing, but obviously this one goes in further, so this is going to dangle free of that when we start locating this, if that makes any sense at all. So hopefully you'll see what I mean in a minute. I'll tap this in. try and get this in level, otherwise it's going to start knocking that bearing out. See there, it's wonky, so I need to bring that side round a bit, and then the top. Now the bottom. I think that's lined up now, so it wasn't too bad. Let's see what happens. I'm going to just check that it's not knocking that. No, it isn't. Cool. Right. Let's drive this home. Just going to keep checking that. This would be so much easier on a press. You can feel what it's actually doing rather than we're that far off now. Right, that's not moved, but that's good. Right. I think that's down. That looks about right. Just gonna check this sits. Gently. Yeah, that's down. Right, there we go. Bearings in. Going to leave that to sit for an hour just to let that adhesive go off before we start filling it with oil and spinning it. So I'm going to put a little bit of oil so they're not running dry. But I don't want to get too much that it pukes out over the gaskets, because the gaskets are, we know they're bone dry at the minute. So I'm going to turn this by hand. Now if you look at the first bit of this video where I spun these, even by hand you can hear the difference. And if we get my impact on it, obviously this is still going to vibrate, but you won't hear that noise. Hear the difference? And that's just corrosion on the races. Bearings are still functional, probably. And there could be an argument that you could have put some additive in there, maybe, but with that jumping up and down, the last thing I want is the bearing to collapse and that whole thing to explode, because then that's the end of this compactor. But right, put some sealant on them now. I can't find a gasket for this yet, but I suspected that this would be the case when I took this apart. So what I did was, I marked that hole because I knew this was going to tear just by looking at the size of it, or the what type of gasket it is. They always tear. So I've marked this, so hopefully this will kind of sit in the shape that's left, if you know what I mean. Be like a positive and a negative image. But I'm just going to put a bit of sealant around here. I doubt if this is going to get under any sort of pressure, so it's not going to leak. but it'll give me time to find a proper gasket for it. I have measured the thickness of it in case I have to make my own out of some gasket paper, because that's not too much of a stretch. Because parts for these seem to be a bit thin on the ground. I'm not using too much. I'm going to try not to use too much because it'll just smear out into the bearing, and we don't want that. This is just to keep this. And there's only 100 ml of oil in there as well, so it's not like it's swimming in the stuff. Right, where are we there? So, call it a bodge, call it whatever you like, but it's going to get me going. I need to be whacking tomorrow, or using the compaction plate tomorrow, should I say. Right, there's that. Now I'm just going to spin them up with this. I'm not going to knock them, do them up tight like you see some of these goons. This is just because it's quicker. There's nothing about you hear that rattle, that's not doing anything. There's nothing about an M6 thread that needs an impact driver on it. Just take some of the donkey work out. Do it up diagonally as best you can. One, two, right, that should do that. I'm going to give this whole job probably an hour, maybe even 2 hours before I spin it up. I don't need to use it until tomorrow, but it'd be good to test it today. Alright, let's get onto this side. Get rid of that bit. Any loose bits aren't going to help, they're just going to make the problem worse. And obviously we've got the oil seal in here, so I put some sealant on it. I marked the top position, which is there, and I put some oil around the seal, because what we don't want to do is put this in dry and rely on it, oil getting sloshed up there. I've just noticed a bit of grit, a bit of gasket. Keeping everything clean. Just keep everything clean. If you don't do anything else, use oil. The right amount of the wrong type is a lot better than none of the right type, if you know what I mean. Put some oil around that seal, it'll help it go on easier, and obviously protect it from wear. And then when we put it on, don't force it on. Just make sure all this is clean. And that way around, and I'm just going to gently offer it up, slightly at an angle, and then just work it round, because you can fold these over and you don't want to do that. Right, so that's that. Same again, put our nuts and bolts in. Get one started. Right, that's that bit. Before we forget, this is 100 mils, this is 1030. In the manual on this one it says 1030 or 1040, and I have 1030, so. But if anyone knows of a better oil to put in this, obviously I'm going to keep this, I'm going to change this a bit more frequently. I might do it once a year. It's only 100 millilitres and it doesn't take that long to do. But yeah, if there's a better oil than 1030 or 1040, let me know. But I want every bit of that. Alright, make sure this is clean. And pop the cap back in. Do. Right, pulley. Remember the woodruff key when we took it off? It's got a curved part and a straight part. So the curved part sits in, on this one, it sits in towards the bearing. Just tap that in and then make sure there's nothing on the inside of this pulley, no grit or anything, because that'll bind up, and if you ever need to take this off again, it will make it a little bit more difficult. I'm just going to seat this with a soft hammer and then a 30mm nut. Now this wasn't tight, so I'm not going to put it back tight. It's only an M8 thread and I don't want to snap it. So I'm just going to, that'll do. That's so much better. Right, now I'll let this go off and then we'll put it back together, fire it up and see what it sounds like. But already it's better. If you compare the old. So there we have it. Right, let that sit. So this is the thing back together. I didn't show it going back together because they're all probably going to be different, but the basic principle is you bolt this back down, put the belts on and then adjust the engine. The only thing I would say that you could probably transfer from one machine to another is on this one you've got 2 bolts to pull the machine evenly, but if that's square you still don't know if these pulleys are in line. So the best thing to do, I think, is to adjust the belt tension, but have a straight edge across the face of the pulleys, as long as the pulley faces are plumb to the rest of the pulley, if you know what I mean. And then that way you know the belt's running straight, because if this has been put on wonky, this is only a cheap machine, so imagine if this plate here has been put on wonky and you line it up so these distances are equal, you're not guaranteeing that the pulley's actually running straight, and it could put undue wear on the pulley or spit it off. So yeah, straight edge across the pulleys, across the centres, running where the belt's running, or the edges if you trust them. But that's the only thing that's really probably generic to each machine, otherwise they're all going to be different. Like say this one's, the exciter's actually part of it, which makes dealing with it a little bit awkward, but however, anyway, let's run this up. Sure, this is on choke. So on idle, the exciter's not actually spinning. There's probably a centrifugal clutch type thing in there, but as we build the revs up, that's perfect. Before, that'll be squealing, making a god-awful noise. So happy with that. Quite easy to do actually. So if you've got an exciter bearings or a compactor plate with the exciter bearings that need changing through one reason or another, this one I think was lack of oil, and then it stood for probably, I want to say 18 months without using it. But you'd think it wasn't sawed outside, it was inside. You'd think that'd be fine, so maybe it was a lack of oil problem that caused the damage, and I don't know. But however, 15 quid a bearing, and it's, as you see, it's easy. Give it a go. So if you've got one that needs doing, just give it a go. It's a lot cheaper than buying a new machine. Hopefully this one helps you out. If you can do me a favour, like and subscribe, helps me grow the channel. I'll see you on the next one.